So let's take a look at the map of capital. This is going to be fun, I think, for you folks. I hope. We'll see. We'll find out. So this is all we have so far. I assume some of you recognize it. So this is not finished. It's barely started. Mountain in the middle. I think the thing in the middle is the Colosseum. I think. And you're... So far it looks like no one recognizes this. So I wouldn't normally do this. If I were the normal head of a normal game company, I would do my best to try to hide from you the things I'm ripping off. Hey, I thought Capital could fly. No, although there is flight in Capital. I would normally, if I were the normal head of a normal company, I would be like, well, I hope no one recognizes this thing I have stolen. But this is the map of diplomacy. Y'all have seen the diplomacy video. I know, because you're all highly moral people, and therefore you have seen the diplomacy map. This is the diplomacy map that is literally all the same relations between all the different regions. It's just been reconfigured to be kind of a polar view. The local terrain is basically like scrubland. It's like where you would, it's very Mediterranean. It's very Mediterranean. What do the different colors represent? Well, in diplomacy, they represent the different starting locations of the different countries. So here in Capital, we can imagine that they represent the different parts of the city that the different major factions control. There are 7 major factions, 7 because that way there can't ever be a tie, right? It's an odd number. There can't ever be a tie. And diplomacy, I think is a great game, so I like the idea. We may not be able to deliver on this. A man's reach should exceed his grasp, else what's a heaven for? But I like the idea that I could give the head of each of these factions. I could give the head of each of these things to one of my friends who can't play, and then they will basically play diplomacy without me, and that will inform all of the crazy events that are going on. Because one of the so there are 2 thesis statements. In fact, let's write this down. Let's put this up over here. You guys get it, right? Let's give us a thesis statement. Our major premise is the conflict between the nobility and the guilds. Our minor premise stalemate until the chain arrives. Or it might not even be stalemate. It might stalemate slash So, this is the city. You can see where the different factions are. I have no idea who these factions are yet. And the neutral locations are where the prince, this is all the power that the prince used to hold. So only a little while ago, these would all have been colored a different color. And the prince alone, sort of like the emperor in Dune, the prince alone owned the more power centers than any other single faction. And my expectation is that most of these right now, but not all, are controlled by the nobility, and some of them are controlled by the guilds. The guilds are a rising power. Now, this conflict between the nobility and the guilds actually propagates itself down into the very bones of the society, because it's not just the conflict between the nobility and the guilds. It is also, so the nobility, the nobles are all old school. They're all Riojan. They are feudal and patriarchal. You can see where this is going, right? And the guilds are all new money. They are from everywhere, and they're very egalitarian. Let's say quasi-democratic. Egalitarian, the new money from, good Lord. So the nobles are old school, The guilds are new. This is the conflict. The nobles have more of the power now, and they're trying to consolidate even more. And the guilds are up and coming. They have less power. So I think the nobles probably already control like 4 of these, right? Four of these. I think the nobles already control about 4 of these, and the guilds control 3. And so that's where we always start with this, and the nobles don't all agree, and the guilds don't all agree. So there's a lot of infighting between them. Neither of them are consolidated organizations. So what kinds of factions are there? And then there's the Strongholds and Followers assumes that there are 4 basic kinds of strongholds. There are military strongholds called keeps that you spend money on if you want to raise an army. And there are religious strongholds called temples that you build if you want to, gain a greater connection with whatever extraplanar entity grants you your powers, and thereby raise extraplanar allies in battle to help you. There are, wizard knowledge, arcane. There are arcane strongholds called towers that you build because you want to research new spells. And there are skill-based strongholds called establishments that are for generating money and spying on people. So that, it seems to me, is a pretty good way to divide up. We have these 4 ideas. That seems like a pretty good way to divide up the different factions. So we have law/military is one source of power. And we have the clergy, churches. It's another source of power. And there may be more than one of each of these in the city, right? Are the colors important to determine what the factions will be? They just denote so the little, you'll notice those little circles with dots in the middle, those are power centers. And at some point we'll do some stream where we figure out what are all those power centers. And controlling them is part of controlling the city. So the ones that don't have, if the ones that don't have power centers in it are just like neighborhoods and districts that maybe, densely populated, and a lot of people live there, maybe a lot of people work there, maybe a lot of business gets done there, but there's nothing in those sections that is super important as far as controlling the city. These are different sources of power: law, military, knowledge, libraries. Does this make sense? Arcane Power. I already have an idea of how that's going to work. And then we have money. Who controls the money? Who controls the currency? Arcane Power. I already have an idea of how that's going to work. And then we have money. Who controls the money? Who controls the currency? So this is just a scratch pad of stuff I'm thinking about. And there are some things I feel like I already know. Like I was thinking, this is literally on the way home last night and then on the way in this morning. I was thinking that I've for a long time I wanted the Imperial College, right, the Imperial University, to be a major faction in the setting. And actually, I ran a whole campaign with a friend of mine who was a student at the Imperial University, so I feel like I know a lot about it. And it would be one of the noble. It would be on the noble side. It represents the kind of old school traditions of people that want to keep Rioja in the hands of Riojans and keep it in the what's the word I'm looking for? The traditions of the noble structure. And I was like, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work, right? I was like, why would anybody care about? Think about like Oxford and Cambridge. Those places don't actually have power. People that come out of there do, but the college doesn't. Like graduating from there tends to be something that the great and the good are expected to do, but the actual colleges don't have power. So how do we give a college power? How do we give this giant university that's basically its own city, right? It's a university that has many colleges inside it. So when you attend this university, you are going to one college to learn. There's a College of Statescraft, for instance, Statescraft and Diplomacy. That's where my friend Aaron was for his campaign. And so I was like, well, and I also knew that I wanted like espionage to be a big thing, and there should be something in this city that is like, the CIA and worked for the prince, right? And it was the prince's information. Sufficiently powerful organization in capital will have its own intelligent gathering division, right? It doesn't matter if you're a guild or a normal house, you have a spy master, okay? It's a city of the great game. But how did the prince, the largest one would have been the prince's intelligence gathering organization. And so I went, wait, colleges are all about knowledge and information. You know, spies and assassins are all about knowledge and information. So that's where, so they're the same thing. So here in the Imperial University, I think, is also the CIA, which we don't have a name for yet. The Imperial University was the prince's, like somewhere inside there. So there's probably a college of, you know, probably has there are several different colleges inside a university. One of them is probably the College of, I hate to just mine like statescraft and diplomacy, but that seems like a good one. So I think it's probably the College of Statescraft. Statescraft and diplomacy, which is where noble people from all over the world send their kids to learn how to be a good leader in a world where there's war and armies, and you want to, you know, being good at statescraft and diplomacy is critical to being a leader in Orden. And it also just happens to be like that has a department within it. We maybe need to know the name of that department. That is, you know, a full-time staff of intelligence gathering. You know, there's operations and intelligence, and they work for the prince. The prince funds the Imperial University, and so there's some sort of bureau inside the College of Statescraft and Diplomacy that is in charge of, you know, most of the people at this college. Most of the people at this college are students and teachers. Most of the students are the children of noblemen from all over the planet, who are sent here to get a really expensive education and learn how to be good leaders. But within this college, there is a full-time organization and this is great, right? Because you've got all of these kids, all these students coming from all over the world, and they all belong to the most powerful families in the world. So that's why the Prince's intelligence agency is inside this college, because they just listen to what these students are talking about, and they learn and gather an incredible amount of really high-value information regarding what the hell's going on in the world. So the College of Statescraft and Diplomacy, there's probably a bureau. Do they call it a bureau? Probably, actually. We may come up with a better word for that. Let's go to our old standby, Dungeon Master's best friend, the Thesaurus. And let's look up bureau and see if we can come up with a good synonym for that. The board, the committee, the department. Department's not bad. Office isn't bad. What would be inside a college? Bureau probably is correct. Be the Bureau of Information. No, it's a little bit too Brazil. I don't even know what that means. Bureau of Interdepartmental Authority. No, that's terrible. But I like that it might have some kind of euphemism, right? Bureau of Intelligence. And there's two of them. There's the Bureau of Intelligence. So there's the Bureau of Intelligence and the Office of Operations, and these are all temp names. We may come back to these. Nobody freak out. It's not unusual during these streams that we write down a whole bunch of ideas, and then I go away and think about it for weeks or whatever, and come back and go, I think I got a better idea for this. But it's important to me that we divide, because this is how it is often done in the real world. This is how the CIA used to do it. I don't know if they still do. Where they have two different divisions. One is gathering intelligence, and one is conducting operations in foreign countries to try to achieve a goal. We figure stuff out, and then we act on what we figured out. And there's often a tension between these two organizations. So even here within the Imperial University, We have the College of Statecraft and Diplomacy. We have the Bureau of Intelligence. All we do is gather information, right? If you're an intelligence agent, you're not a spy. Well, actually, but maybe you are a spy. But the point is, you are somebody whose job it is to just go listen and report back. You don't assassinate people. That's the Office of Operations. And I like the Office of Operations because it's properly euphemistic. You could go to a party, if you remember this, dressed well, go to a party and say, oh, I'm with the Imperial University. Oh, what do you work for? I'm in the Office of Operations. And they would assume that you were like a bursar or something, that you just handled matriculation. And you're like, that's what I want you to think. But actually, we operate operations. We operate our spies in other countries. We do the prince's will. We serve at the pleasure of the prince. That's probably a phrase they would use. We serve at the prince's pleasure. So another thing we have to know about the Imperial University is that it's run by, the master of the university, the chancellor of the university, is a nobleman and the head of one of the great families. Right? And when this dude, because he controls the College of Statecraft, first of all, this is a magic, this university has schools of magic inside it. There's there's probably like the College of Sorcery or something like that is what they would call it. And that's where the best mages in the world go and study. And so being the dude in charge of this university means you have a lot of power. It probably is a source of high-level wizard on his own, right? And so when this dude talks, people listen. Defo he, 100%. All 100% of the heads of the noble families are men, and they want to keep it that way, right? The heads of the guilds are men and women and people from all over the world, but the heads of all of the great families are all Riojan, and they're all men. So this is the nobles represent the old traditions of Rioja, possibly dying traditions. The guilds, which is a new rising power. Why do these people have power? Because we have money. Because we have a lot of money. Is that it? And the noblemen are like, what? What? Well, we've got money. And the guilds are like, no, but actually we have a lot more. And the nobles hate that. They hate these upstart guilds. They wish they could crush them, but the prince is dead. They don't have that power. So we need some names for people. And because this is a medieval Italian, Venice, Florentine style, I would say 16th century, not necessarily in technology, but certainly in culture. The way I get names for this is I go to famous artists. So we go to our old friend, Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio, because this dude is an authentic, 16th century artist. Is Caravaggio important? No, he's just an artist I like, but he was born and lived during a certain space of time. So when I start reading his Wikipedia entry, I see all his relatives and the people he worked for, and I'm like, oh, these names are great. Right? Easy. So there's nothing special about Caravaggio. Don't make the mistake of thinking that there's got some kind of symbolic value. It's just an artist that I like, that I know that lived in the right time. So when I go and find out what were his parents called, where did he go to school, who ran that place, what were the names of the people in his life, it's useful. Android X asks, who controls the dock and the port? Hey, let's stop everything we've been doing and get distracted by something useful. Okay, the docks. So there's a list somewhere that I already have of the guilds. Here are the 9 guilds. Are there 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 guilds. Great. Awesome. So we were talking about who controls the docks. And the reason we went down this road is because so the docks, I think, are this big purple faction, this big purple area, which you can't see, in the lower right. And it is a very powerful part of the city. Controlling the docks means you control quite a lot. And I feel like I know a little bit about the docks. The docks are the only place in the city you can walk around freely with weapons. Because people get off ships, they want to hang out, they want to go to a pub, they want to get something to eat, they want to get shagged, they want to get some food, and then they're going to get back on a ship. and it's just impractical to be confiscating all those people's weapons. Some of these people are only spending a night, a couple of hours in the city before they get back on a boat and go somewhere else. And so the docks are this very unruly, but they're the most multicultural part of the city. And it's just a riot of color and all these different people selling and trading and doing all this work there. And I think the docks are controlled by one of the guilds. I think that's one of the reasons the guilds are rising in power is the prince probably contracted one of the guilds to run the docks. It was probably a big deal. The noble factions didn't like that idea. Did you make that map? No. Nope. I did not. But by the time we're done with it, it should not. It won't look exactly like this. We'll get art. Eventually we'll do a stream where we talk about the streets and districts and stuff like that, and get a little bit more detail about the actual geography and how you get around. But that's not important right now. We're just trying to figure out who's in charge. And we know a little bit. We know a little bit about the Imperial University. Let's make that bold. So this is one of the factions. We don't know who runs it yet, but I've got some ideas. And we're going to just take a little detour here and talk about the docks. We know it's run by one of the guilds. So let's make this like a... Let's give some order to this nonsense. And I wish I were a fish. I wish there were like headers here. That'll have to do. Imperial University and the docks. Right. So Imperial University has many colleges. And, at some point I would like to know what all those colleges are. I don't think we're going to do that right now. That's one or two steps down in the level of details. Imperial University, many colleges, College of Statecraft and Diplomacy, which contains the Bureau of Intelligence and the Office of Operations. There's a chancellor in the university is a nobleman and the head of one of the great families. Okay, that's the docks, however, is run by a guild. So which guild is it run by? And again, hopefully I can set the stage, right? The docks, as you approach Real Hall, they're the first thing you're going to see. And it just looks like all of the different cultures in Orden have all deposited people here. People have wildly different dress, all this different food. It's probably got some of the best food in the city because it's, in the real world, it's where you would be able to go and get, Mexican food and Chinese food and Indian food all in this one place, and all of it authentic because these people all have come from those places. So what are the different guilds? The different guilds are the Pocket. There's the Pocket, which is the Thieves Guild. There's 9 Silver, which is the Assassins Guild. This is an old version. This predates a lot of my current thinking. There's 9 Silver, which is the Assassins Guild. This is back when I thought the entire city was run by the guilds, but I don't think so anymore because that doesn't help me. I need tension, and the tension between the nobility and the guilds is great. So these used to all be basically the same, but now we're going to pick a couple of these guilds, and we're going to say you are the major guilds. 3 of these are going to get promoted to being basically as powerful as a noble house, and the rest are still powerful, but they're not powerful enough to make, they don't control part of the map of capital. So one of these factions controls the docks. Sword and Shield, the Gladiators Guild, probably not them. Actually, there we go. Yeah, okay. There's the Guild of Watchmen, which I don't know. We're going to keep that. We'll see. There's the Fulcrum, the Merchants Guild. That seems reasonable, right? So, run by a guild, run by the guild, run by a guild, run by the Fulcrum. Why is it called the Fulcrum? Why is it called the Fulcrum? Because the Fulcrum is the point on the assayer's scales where goods are turned into money. So, that's the actual name for that point on that structure. When somebody says they dump a bunch of, whatever that they're selling on, and they weigh it and see how much, this is how we this is literally how this is where we make money. Between you buying this and selling this, as these values go back and forth, we take a little bit, and that's how we make our money. So it's run by a guild, the Fulcrum. They are a powerful guild. I don't know who's in charge of the Fulcrum, but let's figure it out. All right, so who is the master of the Fulcrum? Well, we already know a little bit. We already gotta be careful with typos when typing that word. So who is the master of the Fulcrum? Well, it's not going to be a male Riojan, because this is how we distinguish the power of the guilds, which are new and uprising, growing, new and growing, with the power of the nobility. The nobility are old, and they represent the kind of old school way of thought, very, very feudal, very traditional. All the heads of the noble families, with like maybe one exception, all the heads of the noble families are all guys. So the master of the fulcrum is probably a woman, and probably not from Rioja. She's probably from somewhere else. Human or no? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think for all of the major powers, I think something for the fulcrum should probably just be a woman, be a human woman. I don't want to go too crazy. I think we can get crazy with other ancestries, other different kinds of species, if ultimately, once we get into some of the smaller organizations. One of the reasons the noble families hate the current situation is not just that the docks, which are a critical, important part of the economy of capital, are not controlled by them, right? This is a great affront. The docks, we have always controlled the docks. But now they don't anymore. It's not just that it's controlled by a guild. They hate the guilds. They hate the idea of anyone having non-hereditary power, right? That disgusts them, and they wish there was something they could do about it. It's run by a woman. It's the ultimate, the final insult, and they hate that. They hate it. By the way, these noble families, the great noble families, and they're the only ones who feel like this. Everyone else who are born and live in Rioja, they think of Rioja as a fantastic multicultural city. They don't think of themselves as living in a patriarchal society because the nobles aren't that important anymore. They're still important, right? But there's the guilds that are growing in power, and most people in Rioja go their entire lives without dealing with any of the nobility. So this attitude that the nobles have does not represent the average person on the street. It's only if you are a member of that noble house, or you're somebody who benefits from the trade that they do and the money they raise and the power they have, that you would espouse those views. Actual capital is hugely multicultural, and they don't have those kind of old school traditional hangups. So I think it's just a human woman. I think she's from Higara. So she is from the Opal Empire. I don't know her name. Let's find out. Okay, here we go. Shoroma. In the real world, Shoroma was a Japanese poet who lived in the 10th century. Female Japanese poet. So that Higara is kind of an analog mashup of fantasy Japan and a bunch of other places. So this is how I pick names. I go and find obscure real world names for these analog places. We could make a fantasy world that had nothing in it anywhere that was any analog to anything in the real world, but I think that would be a science fiction world. The whole purpose of so Shoroma is the master of the fulcrum, and I don't know like if she dresses in traditional Higaran garb. It would, like it depends on who she's. It probably depends. So Shoroma knows. Oops. But when dealing with everybody else, ooh, this is good. Oh, I like this. So she thinks of herself as Riojan. She was born here. She speaks both languages, no accent. I live in Orange County, California. I live in Southern California. I'm surrounded by people who speak multiple languages natively without any kind of accent. So she is. She would look to you. She would look like a Japanese woman, but she would be dressing and looking like a Venetian, not a Venusian, like a Venetian or a Florentine, 15th century well-to-do guild person. and she's from Rioja. She was born here. She's a native, but her parents were from Higara. And anytime she has to deal with the noble families, which is probably pretty often because she's the head of the guild that runs the docks, she goes out of her way to dress up in the things in basically her parents' outfits, right? Probably stuff her mom gave her. And because she knows it drives them fucking crazy. She knows they hate showing off. She's showing off that her family's not from around here. But that's not how she thinks of herself as having, probably she thinks of herself as being 100% Riojan, but having descended from only one generation removed, part of her is also Higaran, and she doesn't see that as any kind of contradiction at all. So what does Shoroma want? That's a good question. I don't know. That may be for the next stream. Is trying to dig down into the motivations of these characters. So I think that I don't know if she's the master of the fulcrum, what she wants is probably the same as what the fulcrum wants, and I think probably what the fulcrum wants is money, trade. This is the thing that disgusts the nobles, is that these guys just want to make a lot of money, they want to get rich, they want to live wealthy lives, they want to provide for the people that work for them, and the noblemen are like, you shouldn't be able to do that. You are not noble born. That is an affront against tradition. The average Rioja would be, you go, girl, you get your money, right? And so what she wants is, there's probably some personal stuff wrapped up in it that I don't know yet. This is not that. So we know one thing. we know one thing. We may not even know that. We know one thing. We know we've been streaming for an hour and a half, and we have figured out one faction. The docks run by a guild, the fulcrum. So this map, right? This map, the purple, the purple area is run by, and at some point we'll figure out what those three dots are. The docks, the first thing you see when you come to Rioja, where all the trade happens, is run by the fulcrum. The fulcrum is run by Shoroma. And we know a little bit about her. We know enough about her to move on. We gotta figure all this stuff out. Let's figure out. So we know a little bit about the. What's going on here? Where are we? What are we doing? So I need a name for the noble house that runs the university. So if I've done a good job, you're like, she sounds cool. That situation sounds cool. Let's find out more. The thing we're going to find out more about are the other. So I think the Imperial University is run by House Alvaro. House Alvaro is one of the oldest families, not the oldest family. Isn't Alvaro more Spanish than Italian? This isn't Spain or Italy. This is neither Spain nor Italy. Higara is not actually Japan. It is inspired by it. There could be characters in there that is an important point. These are my bullshit fantasy mashup analogs that I have fun playing with. This is not the real world. So there are parts of it that we're going to steal from. Like Vasloria is not medieval England. It's also not medieval Germany. It's also not. It's different parts and different pieces of 11th century France and 15th century Germany, and it's got a whole bunch of stuff all matched up. This is the fun. This is the fun of being a dungeon master, is getting to do this and play in these sandboxes. So House Alvaro, one of the oldest families in Rioja, and who is the chancellor of the university? This guy's an asshole. So we're just going to scroll through Caravaggio's thing. Ooh! Caravaggio left determined to make his own way after a heated argument. At this point, he forged some extremely important friendships with the painter Prospero Orsi. Prospero Alvaro. Sounds good, right? So this guy's like a powerful wizard. There you go. How did you come up with Rioja's name? I don't know. It's a good question because it's a real place in the real world. Rioja is a region of Spain, I think. And I'm like 90% certain I had never heard it before, because how would I have? This is pre-internet. I don't think I had written anything like it. And I just thought it was a cool sounding name. And that happens. You can't get too worked up about that stuff. The only reason you've ever read any fantasy name and thought that was a cool original name is because you don't know enough about the real world. Because almost every fantasy name I've ever heard of, by coincidence or by accident or by design, there's something somewhere in the real world that sounds exactly or almost exactly like. So we always have to be careful when we're doing these world building streams, because I'll make something up and somebody will go, oh, that's from an anime. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know that. And the only reason you're objecting to this name I made up and not that name I made up is because you haven't watched or read or been to enough different places. Otherwise, you would have objected to that too. So we have to be careful. We have to realize that we have to come to grips with the fact that we have to think it's cool first. And I will occasionally, and if we think it's cool, oh, Rioja, that sounds like a cool name for a region. Some percentage of the people watching are going to be like, what? That's like naming it New York. Because to them, it's a real place. But I can't make everybody happy. I'm only trying to make me happy. Now, I will occasionally do a little bit of vetting. I will occasionally, if I'm making, especially these days, if I'm making something up, I'll go and I'll look, hey, this seems like something I made up, or this seems like something obscure I stole. Is this a famous thing from like Game of Thrones? Something hugely famous, not obscure here in America, hugely famous that I, Matt Colville, had just never heard of because I think those things are dumb. So we have Imperial University, run by Prospero Alvaro, Lord of House Alvaro, one of the oldest families in Rioja, powerful wizard. He's the titular head of the College of Sorcery. In other words, being the College of Sorcery is probably the largest and most important one of the colleges. And so sort of like kind of how the President of the United States is automatically the head of his party, even though he might not be doing any work to run it. But it's just a tradition. So he is the titular head of the College of Sorcery. He doesn't actually do any of the day-to-day operations. He just has the title. And he might be like 18th level. I don't know. But somebody asked about the church. Okay, so let's figure out the church. I don't know. How's it going to go? And now we need to know about the gods of Rioja. So this is the result of the previous stream. So now we got to figure out which of these gods is the main one. Lord Anso. So Lord Anso is the god of nobility. He might be, is he the largest and most powerful church? So who of these guys is the major god? The Church of Saint Verona the Meek is the most numerous church in Rioja, but not the most powerful. Aha! It says right here. Thank God. Old Matt from months ago, chat from months ago, folks who helped contribute to this from months ago, thank you, because this is how we know our efforts are paying off, is that when we need, this is how you know, I use all the parts of the buffalo, folks. Try to use all the parts of the buffalo. This is how we know that the work we did before is paying off, because when we have a question now, we can go back here and look, and there's the answer. So, Saint Isabella is her church, the Church of Saint Isabella. So there's more than one church. So this is complex and probably too messy for a game, a thing that players are expected to play and understand. The real world is almost nearly infinitely messy. So that don't model that, because you'll just drive your players crazy. It doesn't matter what kind of game you're making. It doesn't matter if you're making a board game or video game or role-playing game. You need to constrain things so players have clear choices. So we have many gods in Rioja. Each of those gods have many saints, but each of those saints have many churches, because each saint represents different things, and those churches don't agree on what the teachings of the saint are, and some of them agree, but they're like, well, we handle this part of what they teach, and we handle this part of what they teach, and some of these churches think that these churches are heretical, but these churches are like, well, we get power from Saint Isabella, just like you do, so obviously we're not. And we're like, well, you get power from somebody, you're probably all just warlocks, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that's how it works in the actual world, but we can't get too obsessed with that here in the D&D stream. So the church she's the Church of Justice, the bright, the just-handed, the seeker. So let's see, this would be the church. I think maybe it should just be Isabel. I think Isabella, no, saints have longer names than gods. I don't know why that's true. I don't know where I came up with that, but it's true. It's a rule I try to adhere to, is that gods tend to have shorter names and saints tend to have longer names. So this is the Church of Saint Isabella. The what does it mean when you refuse to give up pursuing a goal? Like relentless. Aha! No, 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 no. No, no, all those things are true. Everything you just said is true. But I'm looking for something poetic, right? I'm looking for something not too literal. And this is a noble house. This is a church run by a noble house. It's not a guild. So I'm looking for something a little sinister, right? A little sinister. But that still reinforces the notion that this is the God, this is the saint of justice, right? So this is the church, and there was more than one church. The Church of Saint Isabella the Pitiless, right? The notion being that, like, if this church gets their hands on you, if they have decided, they're judge, jury, and executioner, right? It's that they're tough on crime, right? Who are these invaders? Who are these criminal invaders washing up on our shores? The flotsam and jetsam of the timescape. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm just a tourist, lady. No, you don't look like us. You're a threat. So these guys have a lot of vigilant has a good connotation. I want something that has a threatening connotation. So when people hear about the Church of Saint Isabella the Pitiless, they're like, uh-oh, that sounds bad. So this church has they are the last word on the traditions of Riojan culture. Now, most people in Rioja don't care what these people say, right? But some people do. The noble families do. They're a major faction in the city. They have a lot of power. The head of the church, again, a man, Riojan. We don't know his name. We're going to find out. What do the nobles think about the church? They love it. The church is run by one of the noble families. They're the same. The Church of Saint Isabella and House, let's say, was it House Navarre was the name I liked? House Navarre. Yeah. So we're about to, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to duplicate. No, I think it's just 2 R's. Here we go. This dude right here is probably the main bad guy in Capital. He's the head of the noble faction, right? The other noble factions are not as powerful as he is, but they're also all fighting amongst themselves. So it's this kind of situation where each one of the noble factions is competing to see if they can unite the others and become the next prince and take over. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. That's important. You said something important, the new Daddy, A+, because the nobles run. I guess this is the clearest way to explain this. The noble families of Rioja run the oldest institutions. So part of what we're figuring out is what are those institutions, and then we assign each of them a noble family. So the nobility, the institutions, intertwined. The guilds represent this extra noble, extra traditional threat. They are not part of the normal power structure. They are not part of the nobility. They don't have anything to do. They're trying to create their own power structure within the city. And when the prince was in charge, he allowed that to a certain extent, but he could kind of keep a lid on it. The noble houses didn't like it, but he's like, well, it's kind of necessary right now. And now he's gone. Oh, there's somebody I know about I want to write down. Don't let me forget. Who is the dead lady? We'll find out. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're doing pretty good. We know the Imperial University is run by Duke Prospero. He's the Lord. He's not the Horde of House Alvaro. He's not the Horde of the Louse. That would be a very, very different thing. He is the Lord of House Alvaro. They are one of the oldest families in Rioja. And so by association, House Navarre is the oldest house. Formerly the royal house. But there was a reversal probably 2 or 3 generations ago, and they were no longer the family that held the title of prince, and so they are really eager to kind of get back to the way things used to be. And the Duke Orsino remembers his grandfather, the prince, and he wants to restore the house. He wants to restore the house to its former glory, and he feels by association capital. He feels like capital has become, that it's degenerating, that it's not ordered the way it used to be. It doesn't make the art it used to make. Well, of course not, because now there's artists from all over the world that come to it. But he remembers when there was Riojan art. He remembers when it was Riojan plays and music that everyone around the world sang. But now we're importing all this stuff, and he wants to, I can write that and think that in a way that I can sympathize with, even though it's super toxic. And that's an important part of being a writer. We have the Church of St. Isabella the Pitilist. They are the last word on the tradition. Like when they make a pronouncement, everybody listens. Everybody listens to the Church of St. Isabella, even though they might ignore them ultimately, but their voice is very loud. They are clergy power. The power is both clergy and, oh my God, I just had an idea. Clergy and law, right? In fact, we might give each of these guys a rating. It's not black and white. So these guys might have like a clergy rating of 4 and a law rating of 3 on a scale of 1 to 4. Scale is 1 to 4. All right, so we know a little bit about the church. Their power. So this is a high level. This guy's like probably 18th level. He's an 18th level cleric. He's a cleric of St. Isabella, and he is used to he is the guy. He's the boss. He is the most powerful nobleman in Rioja. Why? Well, probably because of this. Because his knights, the knights of this church, have legal power. They have their own jails. They have their own infrastructure. You're going to discover that there's several different overlaying military and law structures in Rioja, and it's complex. Kind of like the real world. We don't think of it as complex because we're used to it, or at least here in America, right? There's the cops. There's the sheriff. Like I live in a place that's largely unincorporated, so when you drive around, it doesn't say, this town's police. It says this town's police run by the sheriff's department, because the sheriff, or the county, so there's the city law, there's the county law, there's the state law, there's the FBI, but there's actually a lot more. There's the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is basically the Bureau of Partying. There's the Bureau of, there's alcohol, tobacco, firearms. Sounds like a tailgate party. There's all sorts of other legal entities that have law enforcement. There's the fucking rangers and shit like that, which is a real thing, by the way. And so this is also true here. If you are a Riojan citizen, you go about your day and you don't worry about 90% of this stuff. It's probably the local city watch that if there's a crime, you're gonna report to. But there are not, one of the things the chain is going to discover when they arrive at the docks is everything's fine. They get a whole adventure at the docks, maybe, I don't know. But once they want to leave the docks and go to Rioja proper, they have to surrender their weapons. Only knights are allowed to walk the city with weapons, and they're not going to like that. And they may try to do any number of things, but ultimately, what they may try to do is become knights. Okay, how does the officer corps of the company become knights? So we know a little bit about the Imperial University. This is actually, let's color code these So orange is a noble house, and this is the docks. And we are getting close to the end of the first stream, and we'll maybe do another one next week, try to get these happening more regularly. And we'll fill these out some more, but we have all the bones of what we need. And I don't want to get to the dead lady yet, but I still want to do her today. I would like to figure out one more thing so we know a little bit about. So let's look at the. What else is there? We've got the Imperial College. What is another thing, another power structure that we need? I want another noble, the army. Yeah, the army. Trigger 961 is correct. Everybody else is giving really good advice, but a lot of these things, when we talk about banks, and we talk about artisans, these are going to be controlled probably by the guilds. Right, so what are the real power structures in a city or a country? Because remember, capital is a city-state. It's its own nation, basically. So who runs the actual army? Well, it's going to be a noble house. And it is going to be House Verona. So these guys are Law 4. So let me think. The mint. The thing is, I think the mint is controlled. I think the money is controlled. I think. Well, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Everything. By the way, it's not a mint. It's a printing press. They do everything with paper in Capital. It's a huge culture shock for people visiting Capital because it might be the only place in the world that this is true of. But if you arriving, I remember a friend of mine was playing in a game in one of my games set in Capital. He was a nobleman, son of a nobleman, come to Capital to be educated, and that was his whole. It was basically my version of Hogwarts. A lot of fun. And he was, because he was a noble son, he came with literally a chest of gold, and they were like, "Man, what are you doing with this?" He's like, "What do you mean? What am I doing? This is my treasury." And they're like, "Okay, well, we're going to have to take that." And he's like, "What?" And they're like, "I mean, we're going to exchange it. Everything's done with paper here, man. We don't use gold. We're not like, it's not the Middle Ages here." So Capital thinks of itself as being a very advanced city. They do everything with paper. So this is definitely a noble house. So there are 4 noble houses and 3 guilds that are important, right? And the noble houses control the classical power structure of the city, and the guilds tend to control things like manufacturing, trade, stuff like that. I originally thought that the way that it's Capital, it's the city of the great game. These different colored areas are each controlled by a different noble house or a different major guild, and that each of them is like its own city inside Capital, and they have their own spies and their own. And I still want to do that. That's still part of the thesis statement. And one of the things that followed from that was the idea that they each have their own guards, maybe, and they each have their own currency. Yeah. And then I went, wait, yeah, no, that sounds cool. In a novel, that would be fine, because you can just kind of say it, and every once in a while you can have a scene that punctuates it and reinforces it, but otherwise you don't have to worry about it. But in an RPG where players were getting money as part of the fun and spending money as part of the fun, having to worry about exchange rates all the time would probably be a pedantic pain in the ass, slow the game down. So I don't think they're each going to have. This is an important element of being a dungeon master. This is an important element of being an author or an artist, is it's easy to come up with ideas that you think is cool. But as you do this, you're going to start to recognize, ooh, that's one of those ideas that's really cool, but if I actually tried to make it work, it would be a pain in the butt. Yeah, we don't want to complicate the game for our players in a way that isn't fun for them, just because we think it is realistic. And when there's a phrase that I use that is it's one of the most pretentious things I ever say. And that says something, because I spout pretentious nonsense on an hourly basis. When verisimilitude fails, authenticity is no defense. When your players check out and they go, this doesn't make sense to me, or I don't like this, you don't get to say, but this is how it would really be. They don't care. Verisimilitude has failed, and your defense, but this is authentic, isn't going to help. They don't care. It didn't work. So we've been doing it 2.5 hours. Not bad, folks. Not bad. We might have two currencies. The guilds use one. The nobles use another. Huh? Then we have so that might be an interesting compromise. Is there a media of any sort? Yes. darker Galahad, but I don't think we're going to talk about it in this stream. There is another part of this central tension. This is how we know. This is how we know that the nobles versus the guilds is a good central tension, because it gives us many, many layers. It's not literally just these houses versus these mercantile guilds. It's also tradition versus the new, right? It's also the patriarchy versus a kind of egalitarian meritocracy, right? It propagates down. It's also the fact that there's now there's a new tension, and this is brand new when the players show up. This is just starting, and they're going to see it unfold. There's a tension between the broadsheets and the printing press, and that is who controls the information in the city. Because traditionally, it's been the noblemen. I mean, the Engravers Guild. The Engravers Guild engraves these broadsheets, and they do, I think, like one a week. And that's how people in the city know what's going on. And the guys with bells that have the broadsheets and sell them. But now there's an Engravers Guild, and they can produce 2 or 3 different papers a day. And that's something 100% I stole from Terry Pratchett, but Terry Pratchett stole it from the real world. And so now this notion of being able to quickly and cheaply make your own information and distribute it to the people is a huge threat to the nobility. Huge threat. So that's going to happen. We're going to get there. Not right now. So the army. What is the army? I don't even really understand what the army of a city is. What is the standing army of a city? Are they the guards? Are they the city watch? I don't know why people are talking about the Navy. No, the Navy is the thing you use to go attack other people. I'm talking about, like, what is the army? Well, maybe it is the Navy. Maybe it is the Navy. I already know a little bit about this. So I definitely think that the Imperial Navy, which might be named the Royal Armada, are another major power. And they are a military power, so they're definitely Law 4. And they have soldiers that serve on land. They have Marines. They might not have the most, the Marines. So these, I don't know what the names of these Marines would be, but we'll probably have to give them their own name. But these are the guys you're going to see if you're just in the city and you see the army, the number one military force in the city are the Navy's Marines, right? The Navy has lots of ships. They go all over the world. They protect Riojan trade, but they also are part of the governing structure, and they reinforce the noble's will. They are run by a noble house. They're run by House Verona. How integrated is magic? Super integrated. It's a high magic city. One of the ways, if you have money, one of the ways you get around is flying carpets. Law 4, so it's a scale. There are 4. There's law, the clergy. What are the other ones? Knowledge. This will probably be a 2. Because the church definitely has its own libraries, right? And then there's money, which is also probably a 2. This is one of the reasons the noble houses have so much power, is that they are 2 or better probably in every rank. But the guilds probably have, like, each guild has 1 4 and maybe a 3, and then often nothing. Like the fulcrum has no clergy. They have so let's do the same thing here. All right. There we go. So the fulcrum is definitely clergy 0. They have no church. They don't run a church or anything like that. They're probably law 2 or 3. I don't know which, because they have to be able to defend themselves. In other words, they have their own guards. They have their own soldiers. I had to, in order to protect their stuff. And knowledge is both like arcane, but also it's like wizardry power. So like clergy is divine power, but it's also just tradition and knowledge. Knowledge literally means our capacity to get information, intelligence gathering. So law, money, these guys are money for, right? There may not be a noble house that's money for. So this is one of the things that distinguishes the nobles from the guilds, is that the nobles, none of them are rich anymore. They have money, but none of them are rich anymore. The guilds are rich. They have crazy money. And that's what gives them power. So docs, they have law, 3, knowledge 2. These guys, because they have money, they probably have their own intelligence agency. They probably just don't call it that. They're the fulcrum. They're not big and developed enough to have their own CIA, but they got something. I just don't know what. So we've got the church, now we've got the navy. We're getting close to the end of the stream. We have one more thing we're going to spend a little bit of time on. When you talk about law, do you mean each organization has their own, like, literal laws? No, it means they wield legal authority. So the church can arrest you. And they're going to take you to a jail that's run and owned by, it may not even look and seem like it's something run by the church. It may just seem like it's run by House Orsino. It may not even say, it might have their own district, but they have their own arrest powers. The docks can't arrest people, I don't think, but they have their own soldiers. If a fight breaks out, these guys will kill you. If you try to steal something, these guys will stop you. They have their own security. So law covers a lot. It covers both arrest powers and military might and things like security. Make sense? So let's go back to our friend Caravaggio and see if we can find a dude whose first name we like. That's where we got Prospero, we got Orsino. Marco? I like Marco. Marco Verona. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nasinator. So what's the name? Is it Admiral? What's the name of something? What's the name of somebody who runs a navy? Sea Lord, I think. Lord of the Admiralty? Yeah, Lord of the Admiralty. Lord of the Admiralty sounds right. We can do some research and go find out what things in the world. They have multiple admirals, and they have admirals of different ranks. So Admiral Sforza, whom we met in the fiction that I've sent you folks, he's just one of them, and he's a good guy. He's a legit good dude. Oops. Sorry, I'm writing. They would never say, cut off your nose to spite your face. They don't have that idiom. They would say something else. They would say, would you cut off your ear because the music doesn't please you, sir? But that's the conflict between the Admiralty, between the Navy and the Fulcrum, is that the Imperial Navy, the Royal Armada, is a noble house. It's run by Duke Marco, the Lord of House Verona, right? One of the most powerful nobles in the city, and runs the Navy. And the Navy's in charge of protecting the ships that trade with Rioja. Rioja is the #1 trade hub in all of Orden. If you live in Higara and you're able to buy Corsairian wine, it's because it went through, or in some way, someone, they're like Amazon, someone somewhere in Rioja made money off it or facilitated this trade. Everyone trades with Rioja, Rioja trades with everybody else. And so the admiral is constantly threatening not to protect because he's disgusted with the amount of money and power the Fulcrum has. And the Fulcrum's like, but we're not the ones actually, we don't make any of this stuff. We are just facilitating trade. So if you want to stop, if you want to not protect that shipment of Riojan wine, it's not us you make angry. It's this Riojan noble family, these minor nobles you're pissing off. So we will call your bluff, sir. Would you cut off your ear because the music does not please you? These guys are probably like clergy 2. They might be clergy 3. They probably have their own church. Knowledge. Actually, these guys might be knowledge 3. Because they have their own intelligence agency. Money. These guys don't have a lot of cash, actually. These guys aren't super liquid. So we're getting close to the end of the stream, I think. Folks, we know a lot about these characters. We know a lot about these organizations. We've got a lot of work left to do. I would like to have a whole bunch of organizations, not just these guys, but we're just trying to figure out who are the 7 major, but we've got this map. We've got this map right here, which shows you the 7 major factions of capital and the regions they control within the city. 4 of them are noble, 3 of them are guilds. The neutral places used to be controlled by the prince, and now they're up for grabs. And whoever gets them will win. So let's talk about the dead lady. I feel like she is neutral. So she is kind of my version of Strahd. She's my version of Strahd. She's Girl Strahd. This is a quote I wrote for her, but it's actually it's from something else, by the way. It's from something else. This is not original. This is not Matt Colville, but it's a quote that tells us a lot about this character. It's a kind of a perversion of an existing quote. Do you believe in destiny? That even the law of time can be broken for a single terrible purpose. She is like Mr. Freeze. She was a nobleman. She was a noblewoman. She was the wife of one of the husbands of a noble house. And when something happened and he died, and she was alive, was a living human, and she committed a ritual desecration in her despair. And now one of these noble quarters, is undead. The entire thing. And she's in charge. And she sits on her throne of bone, lamenting the death of her husband, trying to find a way. She couldn't bring him back. The power of life and death was not enough. But if somehow the law of time could be broken, and she doesn't care about any of the stuff that's going on in the city, but she has a lot of power for some reason. I don't exactly know why. Yeah, there's an entire district of undead, and they are one of the 7 major. And I think they are formerly. Formerly. And so there's something that she's in control of. There's something that people need that she runs. So Have a Magical Day asks a good question. She's still on the traditionalist side. The traditionalists think she is, and she doesn't do a lot to dissuade them, but really she's like the Ents. She's on her side. Her husband was a traditionalist. Her husband, so they all know her. All these, the Duke Marco knows her. She remembers when she was a young, beautiful woman, and now she's the queen of the dead. Now she's the dead lady. Ruling, and there are houses in this place. This used to be a place where people lived, not anymore. Now it's a mirror mockery of life. There are ghouls and wraiths still going about, still moving through the city, still going about the habits they had in life. But it's only her will that makes it happen. Her memory of what this place was before her husband was murdered that keeps these things going. Is she insanely hostile? Nope. She sort of wants to be left alone. She wants to solve her own problem, which is, how do I bring my husband back? That's the only thing that matters to her. And she tried something, and it resulted in the destruction of her entire house and that quadrant of the city that her husband ruled over. And she damned all of these people to an eternal life of undeath. And now she rules them. And she didn't get all that for nothing. So it's a tragedy. She's this tragic figure. And she will do literally anything to restore her husband to life. So people are suggesting good answers to the question, what's she in charge of, but not dramatic answers. Being in charge of, like, I actually did think about having her in charge of water and power, right? Like water and power is, if you can turn the lights off, that's huge. But that's not sexy. That's not exciting. The banks, the money, was her husband in charge of the mint, and now the printing presses still print money and they're run by zombies. That's not bad. I think this is pretty cool. Yep. Stand by. I have an idea. It's maybe not a good idea. But I think if there's a navy, right, like America has a lot, most countries have many, we've talked about this before, many different layers and factions of military power. So I think that she might be in charge of, like, she's the, right, like it's her husband. She's inherited this. And that this order of knights that were once the most feared agents of law in the city, the most dogged and relentless, are now undead. Death Knight FBI. That sounds fucking badass. But like, the problem is, so these agents are still intelligent. They're undead. They're still intelligent. They remember their former lives. They're still good at their jobs, but they only work now. They work for the dead lady. They used to work. They felt like they worked for the city. They worked for the nobleman who was a traditionalist but believed in the principles of law, right? And so now if someone wants to, the thing is, it used to be you could sort of depend on these guys to do their thing. But now if you want the FBI to arrest somebody, you basically have to go petition the dead lady and convince her. And she's reluctant. She's reluctant to use this power. She still has it. Her husband wasn't reluctant to use it. The FBI, before they were Death Knights, these guys were a powerful force in the city. But they're still powerful, but now they only serve her. They're her Nazgul. They're her Nazgul. She's the lady, and they're the taken. But they don't do anything. They just stay so if things go bad, you're in trouble when there's one of these fucking Death Knights walk in. You're like, oh shit. Because not only does it mean you're in trouble, it means that you pissed off someone with pull over the dead lady. And he went and petitioned her and said, please remember your husband. Think of what he would do. We need to arrest these people. We need to stop. We need to put this down. And she's like, what does this have to do with me? But she can be convinced. Yeah, the IRS idea that she collects taxes, I don't think tax collecting is being exciting, but Death Knight FBI and zombie tax collectors, we can have our cake and eat it too. I feel like the tax collectors are probably regular people. I feel like we've gone too far in one direction. What is the name of her house? This is a place. It's a city, the capital city of Malta, but it's a good name. I like it. It's got a V in it. These are some good names. This is a little bit on the nose, but I like it. Duchess Lenora. Why is that on the nose? Because it's from the Raven. That's why people are saying Nevermore. It's because Lenore is from the Raven. Does she mind being called the Dead Lady? No. She doesn't. She cares so little about what people do or say. So I feel like we're pretty good. So she is... if there were a, I don't know what they, I don't know what if there were a. So officially, she's the head of her family. There are still members of House Valletta that are alive that weren't in this part of the city when the ritual desecration was committed. Um, so she is technically part of the. By the time the stream starts, if someone goes to her for help because she has a lot of power because of the Death Knight FBI. If you're a nobleman, she's a lot more likely to say yes, because you'll be able to appeal to her based on your family's relations with her family. And I knew your husband, and we used to go to all the same parties. But the fact that she doesn't care about any of this anymore means she's sort of starting to listen to the guilds more, because she doesn't care. That traditionalism doesn't really matter to her anymore. By the way, she's 100% behind like the guys should be in charge. She's a member of that. She's a member. She doesn't want. She wants to return her husband to life, and then he would be back in charge of her house and family, and that's the way she thinks it should be. She's not a progressive by any means, but she's not. So so it may be more 3 and the dead lady, and which way she goes may tilt the balance of power. If she weren't a lich, basically, or a vampire, if she wasn't a vampire, she would not have the power. They would just be House Valletta is disbanded, and they would pick some minor house under House Valletta and say, you are now the major, and they would promote it, and that would be the normal thing that would happen. But because she's a fucking vampire, they sort of have to listen to her. They don't want to. So this ritual happened recently, a couple of years ago, I think. So I think we're done for today. We got a lot done. We know a lot about the thing of stuff. We know 3 and maybe we know 4 of the noble houses, and we know 1 of the guilds. So next time we get together, which might be next Saturday, I don't know, we'll talk more about the rest of the guilds. Maybe we'll start assigning them places. But we got there's going to be tons of other organizations. We will eventually know things like the names of shops and streets and stuff like that. But one thing at a time. Again, we can't. This is how we get big, huge things done, is we do not mind that we only got a little bit done. Because if we get a little bit done over and over and over again, in a couple of years, we'll know a lot. And we don't need to do many more streams before I feel like I would know enough to just start running. Like, for instance, right, the map, right? I'm probably only going to work on, for the stream, I'm probably going to only work on what is the map of the docks. What do the docks actually look like? Because that's where they're probably going to spend the first couple of sessions. So why bother with it? You get it. So I think we're done. Let me save this. God, if I failed to save this, that would be a whole thing. Capital. Organizations. The power of a well-indexed hard drive. So, people are looking at stuff. You guys can't see all this stuff. Away with your wee monkey. Is that character art, you spy? Well, I mean, there's a picture of an inexorable here. So, that's it. I think we're done. We can get rid of this. Whatever the hell it is, capital. We can go back to this. Transmute. Hello. So, thanks for hanging out, folks. I feel like we did good. There was a lot of interaction. People had good ideas. This was a lot, this wasn't collaborous, where I'm literally just soliciting ideas from the stream. This is my creative process. But every once in a while, somebody would say something cool. I'd be like, oh, hey, there we go. Well, don't edit out all the tangents. The Twitch video is not going anywhere. Don't worry. You guys can always watch this on Twitch, but for the YouTube audience, they don't want the blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if we'll stream next Saturday, but we might. It depends on how next week goes. And that's it. So This is the first part of what was probably a 2 or 3 part stream series, and I don't know what will happen next, but we might get another video done next week, and then more streaming, probably more code names on Tuesday night, probably more NetHack, The Adventures of Tarna, crazy. We might play NetHack tonight. I don't know. Who knows? I'm going to play it by ear. Until next time, folks. Peace out.